Selections from the complete works of Swami Vivekananda. Part 27. The Future of India. Section 2. My friends, therefore it is of no use fighting among the caste. What good will it do? It will divide us all the more, weaken us all the more, degrade us all the more. The days of exclusive privileges and exclusive claims are gone forever from the soil of India, and it is one of the great blessings of the British rule in India. Even to the Mohammedan rule we owe that great blessing, the destruction of exclusive privilege. That rule was, after all, not all bad. Nothing is all bad and nothing is all good. The Mohammedan conquest of India came as salvation to the downtrodden, to the poor. That is why 1/5 of our people have become Mohammedans. It was not the sword that did it all. It would be the height of madness to think it was all the work of sword and fire. And the 1/5, 1/2 of your Madras people will become Christians if you do not take care. Was there ever a sillier thing before in the world than what I saw in Malabar country? The poor pariah is not allowed to pass through the same street as a high caste man. But if he changes his name to a hodgepodge English name, it is all right, or to a Mohammedan name, it is all right. What inference would you draw except that these Malabaris are all lunatics, their homes so many lunatic asylums, and that they are to be treated with derision by every race in India until they mend their manners and know better? Shame upon them that such wicked and diabolical customs are allowed. Their own children are allowed to die of starvation, but as soon as they take up some other religion, they are well fed. There ought to be no more fight between the castes. The solution is not by bringing down the higher, but rising the lower up to the level of the higher. And that is the line of work that is found in all our books. In spite of that, you may hear from some people whose knowledge of their own scriptures and whose capacity to understand the mighty plans of the ancients are only zero. They do not understand, but those do that have brains, that have the intellect to grasp the whole scope of the work. They stand aside and follow the wonderful procession of national life through the ages. They can trace it step by step through all the books, ancient and modern. What is the plan? The ideal at one end is the Brahmin, and the ideal at the other end is the Chandala, and the whole work is to rise the Chandala up to the Brahmin. Slowly and slowly you find more and more privileges granted to them. There are books where you read such fierce words as these. If the Shudra hears the Vedas, fill his ears with molten lead, and if he remembers a line, cut his tongue out. If he says to the Brahmin, you Brahmin, cut his tongue out. This is diabolical old barbarism, no doubt, that goes without saying. But do not blame the lawgivers, who simply record the customs of some section of the community. Such devils sometimes arose among the ancients. There have been devils everywhere, more or less in all ages. Accordingly, you will find that later on this tone is modified a little, as for instance, do not disturb the Shudras, but do not teach them higher things. Then gradually we find in other smritis, especially in those that have full power now, that if the Shudras imitate the manners and customs of the Brahmins, they do well. They ought to be encouraged. Thus it is going on. I have no time to place before you all these workings, nor how they can be traced in detail. But coming to plain facts, we find that all the castes are to rise slowly and slowly. However, there are thousands of castes, and some are even getting admission into Brahminhood. For what prevents any caste from declaring they are Brahmins? Thus, caste with all its vigor has been created in that manner. Let us suppose that there are castes here with 10,000 people in each. If these put their heads together and say, we will call ourselves Brahmins, nothing can stop them. I have seen it in my own life. Some caste become strong, and as soon as they all agree, who is to say nay? Because whatever it was, each caste was exclusive of the other. It did not meddle with others' affairs. Even the several divisions of one caste did not meddle with the other divisions. And those powerful echo makers, Shankaracharya and others, were the great caste makers. I cannot tell you all the wonderful things they fabricated, and some of you may resent what I have to say. But in my travels and experiences, I have traced them out and have arrived at most wonderful results. They would sometimes get hordes of Baluchis and at once make them Kshatriyas, also get hold of hordes of fishermen and make them Brahmins forthwith. They were all rishis and sages, and we have to bow down to their memory. So, be you all rishis and sages, that is the secret. More or less, we shall all be rishis. What is meant by a rishi? The pure one. Be pure first, and you will have power. Simply saying, I am a rishi, will not do. But when you are a rishi, you will find that others obey you instinctively. Something mysterious emanates from you, which makes them follow you, makes them hear you, makes them unconsciously, even against their will, carry out your plans. That is rishihood. Now, as to the details, they of course have to be worked out through generations. But this is merely a suggestion in order to show you that these quarrels should cease. Especially do I regret that in modern times there should be so much dissension between the caste. This must stop. It is useless on both sides, especially on the side of the higher caste, the Brahmin, because the day for these privileges and exclusive claims is gone. The duty of every aristocracy is to dig its own grave, and the sooner it does so, the better. The more it delays, the more it will fester, and worse death it will die. It is the duty of the Brahmin, therefore, to work for the salvation of the rest of the mankind in India. If he does that, and so long as he does that, he is a Brahmin. But he is no Brahmin when he goes about making money. You, on the other hand, should give up help to the false Brahmin and give help only to the real man who deserves it. That leads to heaven, but sometimes a gift to another person who does not deserve it leads to the other place, says our scripture. You must be on your guard about that. He only is the Brahmin who has no secular employment. Secular employment is not for the Brahmin, but for the other caste. To the Brahmins, I appeal that they must work hard to rise the Indian people by teaching them what they know, by giving out the culture that they have accumulated for centuries. It is clearly the duty of the Brahmins of India to remember what real Brahminhood is. As Manu says, all these privileges and honors are given to the Brahmin because with him is the treasury of virtue. He must open the treasury and distribute its valuables to the world. It is true that he was the earliest preacher to the Indian races. He was the first to renounce everything in order to attain to the higher realization of life, before others could reach to the idea. It was not his fault that he marched ahead of the other caste. Why did not the other caste so understand and do as he did? Why did they sit down and be lazy and let the Brahmins win the race? But it is one thing to gain an advantage and another thing to preserve it for evil use. Whenever power is used for evil, it becomes diabolical. It must be used for good only. So, this accumulated culture of ages of which the Brahmin has been the trustee, he must now give to the people at large, and it was because he did not give it to the people that the Mohammedan invasion was possible. It was because he did not open this treasury to the people from the beginning that for 1,000 years we have been trodden under the heels of everyone who chose to come to India. It was through that we have become degraded, and the first task must be to break open the cells that hide the wonderful treasures which our common ancestors accumulated. Bring them out and give them to everybody, and the Brahmin must be the first to do it. There is one old superstition in Bengal that if the cobra that bites sucks out his own poison from the patient, the man must survive. Well then, the Brahmin must suck out his own poison. To the non-Brahmin caste I say, wait, be not in a hurry. Do not seize every opportunity of fighting the Brahmin, because as I have shown, you are suffering from your own fault. Who told you to neglect spirituality and Sanskrit learning? what you have been doing all this time, why you have been indifferent. Why do you now fret and fume because somebody else had more brains, more energy, more pluck and go than you? Instead of wasting your energies in vain discussions and quarrels in the newspapers, instead of fighting and quarreling in your own homes, which is sinful, use all your energies in acquiring the culture which the Brahmin has, and the thing is done. Why do you not become Sanskrit scholars? Why do you not spend millions to bring Sanskrit education to all the caste of India? That is the question. The moment you do these things, you are equal to the Brahmin. That is the secret of power in India. Sanskrit and prestige go together in India. As soon as you have that, none dare say anything against you. That is the one secret. Take that up. The whole universe, to use the ancient Advaitist simile, is in a state of self hypnotism. It is will that is the power. It is a man of strong will that throws, as it were, a halo round him and brings all other people to the same state of vibration as he has in his own mind. Such gigantic men do appear. And what is the idea? When a powerful individual appears, his personality infuses his thoughts into us, and many of us come to have the same thoughts, and thus we become powerful. Why is it that organizations are so powerful? Do not say organization is material. Why is it, to take a case in point, that 40 millions of Englishmen rule 300 millions of people here? What is the psychological explanation? These 40 millions put their will together, and that means infinite power, and you 300 millions have a will each separate from the other. Therefore, to make a great future India, the whole secret lies in organization, accumulation of power, coordination of wills. Already before my mind rises one of the marvelous verses of the Rig Veda Samhita, which says, "Be thou all of one mind, be thou all of one thought. For in the days of yore, the gods being of one mind were enabled to receive oblations. That the gods can be worshipped by men is because they are of one mind." Being of one mind is the secret of society, and the more you go on fighting and quarreling about all trivialities such as Dravidian and Aryan, and the question of Brahmins and non-Brahmins and all that, the further you are off from that accumulation of energy and power which is going to make the future India. For mark you, the future India depends entirely upon that. That is the secret, accumulation of willpower, coordination, bringing them all, as it were, into one focus. Each Chinaman thinks in his own way, and a handful of Japanese all think in the same way, and you know the result. That is how it goes throughout the history of the world. You find in every case compact little nations always governing and ruling huge unwieldy nations, and this is natural, because it is easier for the little compact nations to bring their ideas into the same focus, and thus they become developed, and the bigger the nation, the more unwieldy it is. Born as it were a disorganized mob, they cannot combine. All these dissensions must stop. There is yet another defect in us. Ladies, excuse me, but through centuries of slavery, we have become like a nation of women. You scarcely can get 3 women together for 5 minutes in this country or any other country, but they quarrel. Women make big societies in European countries and make tremendous declarations of women's power and so on. Then they quarrel, and some man comes and rules them all. All over the world, they still require some man to rule them. We are like them. Women we are. If a woman comes to lead women, they all begin immediately to criticize her, tear her into pieces, and make her sit down. If a man comes and gives them a little harsh treatment, scolds them now and then, it is all right. They have been used to that sort of mesmerism. The whole world is full of such mesmerists and hypnotists. In the same way, if one of our countrymen stands up and tries to become great, we all try to hold him down. But if a foreigner comes and tries to kick us, it is all right. We have been used to it, have we not? and slaves must become great masters. So give up being a slave. For the next 50 years, this alone shall be our keynote. This, our great mother India. Let all other vain gods disappear for the time from our minds. This is the only God that is awake, our own race everywhere, His hands everywhere, His feet everywhere, His ears. He covers everything. All other gods are sleeping. What vain gods shall we go after and yet cannot worship the God that we see all around us, the Virat? When we have worshipped this, we shall be able to worship all other gods. Before we can crawl half a mile, we want to cross the ocean like Hanuman. It cannot be. Everyone going to be a yogi, everyone going to meditate. It cannot be. The whole day mixing with the world with karma kanda and in the evening sitting down and blowing through your nose. Is it so easy? Should rishis come flying through the air because you have blown 3 times through the nose? Is it a joke? It is all nonsense. What is needed is chitta shuddhi, purification of the heart. And how does that come? The first of all worship is the worship of the Virat, of those all around us. Worship it. Worship is the exact equivalent of the Sanskrit word, and no other English word will do that. These are all our gods, men and animals, and the first gods we have to worship are our own countrymen. That is what we have to worship, instead of being jealous of each other and fighting each other. It is the most terrible karma for which we are suffering, and yet it does not open our eyes. Well, the subject is so great that I do not know where to stop, and I must bring my lecture to a close by placing before you in a few words the plans I want to carry out in Madras. We must have a hold on the spiritual and secular education of the nation. Do you understand that? You must dream it, you must talk it, you must think it, and you must work it out. Till then, there is no salvation for the race. The education that you are getting now has some good points, but it has a tremendous disadvantage, which is so great that the good things are all weighed down. In the first place, it is not a man-making education. It is merely and entirely a negative education. A negative education or any training that is based on negation is worse than death. The child is taken to school and the first thing he learns is that his father is a fool. The second thing that his grandfather is a lunatic. The third thing that all his teachers are hypocrites. The fourth that all the sacred books are lies. By the time he is 16, he is a mass of negation, lifeless and boneless. And the result is that 50 years of such education has not produced one original man in the 3 presidencies. Every man of originality that has been produced has been educated elsewhere and not in this country, or they have gone to the old universities once more to cleanse themselves of superstitions. Education is not the amount of information that is put into your brain and runs riot there, undigested all your life. We must have life building, man making, character making, assimilation of ideas. If you have assimilated 5 ideas and made them your life and character, you have more education than any man who has got by heart a whole library. Yata karaschandana bharavahi bharasya veta natu chandanasya. The ass carrying its load of sandalwood knows only the weight and not the value of the sandalwood. If education is identical with information, the libraries are the greatest sages in the world, and encyclopedias are the rishis. The ideal, therefore, is that we must have the whole education of our country, spiritual and secular, in our own hands, and it must be on national lines through national methods as far as practicable. Of course, this is a very big scheme, a very big plan. I do not know whether it will ever work out, but we must begin the work. But how? Take Madras for instance. We must have a temple, for with Hindus religions must come first. Then you must say, all sect will quarrel about it, but we will make it a non-sectarian temple, having only Om as the symbol, the greatest symbol of any sect. If there is any sect here which believes that Om ought not to be the symbol, it has no right to call itself Hindu. All will have the right to interpret Hinduism, each one according to his own sect ideas, but we must have a common temple. You can have your own images and symbols in other places, but do not quarrel here with those who differ from you. Here should be taught the common grounds of our different sect, and at the same time the different sect should have perfect liberty to come and teach their doctrines with only one restriction, that is, not to quarrel with other sect. Say what you have to say. The world wants it, but the world has no time to hear what you think about other people. You can keep that to yourselves. Secondly, in connection with this temple, there should be an institution to train teachers who must go about preaching religion and giving secular education to our people. They must carry both. As we have been already carrying religion from door to door, let us along with it carry secular education also. That can be easily done. Then the work will extend through these bands of teachers and preachers, and gradually we shall have similar temples in other places, until we have covered the whole of India. That is my plan. It may appear gigantic, but it is much needed. You may ask, where is the money? Money is not needed. Money is nothing. For the last 12 years of my life, I did not know where the next meal would come from. But money and everything else I want must come because they are my slaves and not I theirs. Money and everything else must come. Must, that is the word. Where are the men? That is the question. Young men of Madras, my hope is in you. Will you respond to the call of your nation? Each one of you has a glorious future if you dare. Believe me. Have a tremendous faith in yourselves, like the faith I had when I was a child and which I am working out now. Have that faith, each one of you, in yourself. That eternal power is lodged in every soul, and you will revive the whole of India. Aye, we will go then to every country under the sun, and our ideas will before long be a component of the many forces that are working to make up every nation in the world. We must enter into the life of every race in India and abroad. We shall have to work to bring this about. Now for that I want young men. It is the young, the strong, the healthy, of sharp intellect that will reach the Lord, say the Vedas. This is the time to decide your future, while you possess the energy of youth, not when you are worn out and jaded, but in the freshness and vigor of youth. Work, that is the time for the freshest, the untouched and unsmelt flowers alone ought to be laid at the feet of the Lord, and such he receives. Rouse yourselves, therefore, for life is short. There are greater works to be done than aspiring to become lawyers and picking quarrels and such things. A far greater work is this sacrifice of yourselves for the benefit of your race, for the welfare of humanity. What is in this life? You are Hindus, and there is the instinctive belief in you that life is eternal. Sometimes I have young men come and talk to me about atheism. I do not believe a Hindu can become an atheist. He may read European books and persuade himself he is a materialist, but it is only for a time. It is not in your blood. You cannot believe what is not in your constitution. It would be a hopeless task for you. Do not attempt that sort of thing. I once attempted it when I was a boy, but it could not be. Life is short, but the soul is immortal and eternal. And one thing being certain, death, let us therefore take up a great ideal and give up our whole life to it. Let this be our determination. And may He, the Lord, who comes again and again for the salvation of His own people, to quote from our scriptures, may the great Krishna bless us and lead us all to the fulfillment of our aims.